Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Oh, Mr. Sheffield. It's a podcast about The Nanny, a hit sitcom from the 90s starring Fran Drescher, SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher. I am Sean Pasquale here with my co-host,
Toria Sheffield.
That's right. And we co-host this podcast for you to listen to where every week we talk about The Nanny. This week, Season 5, Episode 17, Homey Work, which I gotta say, the minute I read the title, I went, uh-oh, are we in trouble? But I think they handled it pretty okay, all things considered. A little stereotypy, a couple of cringy lines.
I was delighted. I was delighted at the quote rapper reveal, which we'll get to.
Yes, me too. I think overall, like, good. They did it for the 90s. They did a pretty good job. I mean,
and there was one. We'll get to it. There's one visual gag in that montage that, like, I actually laughed out loud.
Same. I bet you it was the same one. Okay, so let's dive right into it, Toria. Tell us, what is this? Give us a short version, and then let's get into it.
So, as usual, Fran attempts to help Mr. Sheffield and prove her worth, only to really screw things up for him. Let me start over. Basically, Fran tries to help Mr. Sheffield professionally, and it completely backfires. So we think. And this is
can I just interject real quick? This is, I don't know why it's taken me this long, but this is the first episode where it really coalesced for me how much this is I Love Lucy. Like, especially at this point, the show is literally just I Love Lucy. It's just like he's literally making shows, and she comes in and she's like, Ricky, I want to help. And he's like, no, Lucy, I do everything for myself at the Club Babaloo. And she's like, I can help you, Ricky. And then she like goes and she does something and she screws everything up. And then she's like, wah! And then she like fixes it at the last minute, or she puts on like a funny costume and dances around, and it somehow works. It's Lucy.
So it's so funny you say that, because I just saw a clip from later this season where they like make that direct parallel in a very fun way.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay. So, hey, you're not crazy this time.
Okay. All right. For now.
But,
okay.
Yeah. And who directed, who wrote?
Oh, so this one was written by Jane Hamill, not related to Mark Hamill. It's spelled differently. And of course, Dorothy Lyman directed, as I think she's directed every episode this season, except for the one that Fran directed.
Mm-hmm,
right? Didn't we have a Fran one a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, we did.
I feel like we did.
Yeah. And so this episode, it starts off with Niles and Gracie in the kitchen, and they're arm wrestling. And it's so sad that it's this hard for him to beat a little girl.
She got big, though.
I mean, she's like a tween now, but still, he's a grown man. Well, he did just have a heart attack, so I can see it more. But so we find Fran comes in, and it turns out that they are wrestling over who's going to get her bedroom when she and Mr. Sheffield get married and they move in together into the same bedroom. And I was like, wow, it's crazy that they don't share a room now that they're engaged. But I could see Mr. Sheffield also being very proper about certain things, especially with kids in the house. So
there's a lot of that in the next two episodes that made me go like, oh, wow, that's weird. They're like legitimately waiting until marriage, which seems like very odd to me. And also like just personally, I think is like a massive mistake. Like, I don't think anyone should wait until marriage to have sex with someone for the first time. I think that's insane.
Yeah. I really do wonder like where that creative choice came from, because like, this was not I Love Lucy times when, people had to sleep in twin beds on television if they were married. It was the late 90s. So I would love to be like, what was the thinking behind like that specifically, right?
Listen, if SAG-AFTRA goes on strike, Fran might have a lot of time on her hands.
Ooh.
Or we'll go find her on a picket line. We'll just show up there with microphones.
Ooh, I love this idea. Then Mr. Sheffield comes in, and he tells Fran that, Fran tells him, she's like, oh, I think you forgot to pay me this week. And he's like, oh, I didn't think I needed to, like, now that we're engaged. And she goes, but we've always been a 2-income family. And he's like, yeah, it was just like, it's a very funny line to like claim you're a 2-income family
when he pays. Yeah. I mean, he basically says like, yeah, but but your income came out of my income. Like what?
Yes. And she's like, I don't want to be just one of those wives that just stays at home and goes out with friends and gets her hair done. And then she kind of takes a beat and she goes, well, okay, I'll try it for a week. And I just wrote, wow, can you even imagine that that's some people's lives? Like they just get married and then they never work again.
Yes, crazy. I can't imagine.
You son of a bitch. Well, so then in the next scene,
it's also like if you think raising children does not work, then I got news.
Oh no. But here's the thing: there's women who either don't have kids and don't work, or they have a full-time live-in nanny and don't work.
Yes, that's true. That is very true. That I can't imagine. I feel like I would just get bored. You know what I mean? Like I'm looking forward to like. We were actually just talking about this the other day of how like I'm really looking forward to like making lunches in the morning and dropping the kids off at school and then making snacks in the afternoon and picking them up and then cooking. Like I'm excited to have like stuff to do all day, you know?
I feel like I could get used to, I could fill my time. I could find ways to fill my time.
No, I get bored. I can only play so many video games.
Well, then in the next scene, I love this scene because Mr. Sheffield and Cece are in the office and Mr. Sheffield's kind of like looking over the guest list and he's like, Cece, like I see you're not bringing a +1 to the wedding. And she's like, oh, I just thought I'd go with you. And then he's like, I don't really think that's feasible. And then she's like, oh, okay. Can I at least catch a ride with you guys? And I was like, oh my God, this is so pathetic. It's so funny. And they also then establish in this scene that they are producing a quote, hip urban musical, which was very in vogue at the time because like Bring in the Noise, Bring in the Funk was like one of the biggest shows on Broadway. So this actually does track in terms of like what people would probably be chasing in terms of a hit.
Yeah.
But Mr. Sheffield,
they rightfully even admit they're the two worst people to do this.
Yes. He's like, I'm just not sure we're the right people to be doing this. Yeah. And Fran happens to be in the room and she's like, who's more cutting edge than you? You're the one who cast Charles Nelson Riley and Rip Torn in Love Letters, which if you know that reference is very funny because it would basically mean that he took this like this classic play about like a man and a woman who've been writing love letters to each other their whole lives and like basically made it a play between two gay men, which would have been very edgy for the time.
Yeah. But also Rip Torn is one of those men. Yes, so it's like, what?
The two people that he would have cast are very funny. Yeah. It would be like the two biggest clowns of the era.
Coach and Rip Torn.
And so we also established that Cece's like really struggling with this wedding and the fact that it's like that Mr. Sheffield and Fran getting married is like a real thing. And she's kind of trying to like assert her dominance wherever she can in terms of like the business partner over romantic partner relationship. And it's not working. And it's
she's physically the most pregnant we've seen. Like the actress is now at peak pregnancy, which will come into play at the end of this episode.
Oh, yes, it will. And so, then we cut to Fran and Sylvia, and they are meeting with a wedding planner, and it's like the tasting and stuff like that. And Fran is kind of complaining to Sylvia about how, like, Mr. Sheffield wants her to stop working, and she doesn't know how she feels about it. And in my head, I'm like, why does he want her to stop working? Like, she literally has the role of wife and childcare provider already. But I guess maybe it's the money thing, which I do understand.
Right. I don't think it's that he wants her to stop doing what she's doing. He's just like, I'm not going to continue to pay you to do this. That's insane.
That's true. That is true. Well, but Sylvia's like, honey, no, like you need to, stop working and just, you're going to be the man behind the woman, which I do hate that idea. Like, I guess it's fine if you're framing it as like, no. Like every successful person usually has a partner that like enables them to be successful. And that person's work is like incredibly valuable as well. But it's like, I don't know. I think Sylvia was more like, no. Like you be the secret puppet master as, and don't take credit.
I didn't get that. I got the first thing off of that line. I got her basically being like, look, man, you get to be the person that's like behind it. Like, sure, he's like a very powerful, important man, but like you're going to be taking care of like his life as she has been, to be fair.
Yeah.
And as Niles, it points out in the next episode, Niles is as well. So it's not like that's the thing is in this situation, Fran like has like half her job is like already taken care of for her. Like she doesn't have to like make dinner or fold laundry or like she doesn't have to do any of that stuff.
I think I just like I dislike the idea of that, like, women not getting the credit for being half of a success story.
That's the problem, right? Is women or men, right? I mean, now like there are plenty of stay-at-home dads, and it's like, but isn't that always like the case, right? Where it's like a lot of times like the credit isn't, I mean, more often for women, obviously, where it's like, oh, she's just a stay-at-home mom, you know? And it's like, yeah, I guess, but like that enables her husband to work all the time and like, and not have his children like just be abandoned, and like have like a parent there all the time. And like, you know, ideally, like he comes home to a clean house, we would assume, and like gets to eat dinner that she's made. So it's like, I don't know, like, and she probably like schedules all his appointments and make sure he goes to the dentist.
I need a wife. I mean, what am I complaining about? Kyle does everything for me. I like how
well, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I do all of that for Elizabeth. She like works really hard, and like I don't. So
if Kyle happens to not be home when I come home, he puts the fish food in front of the door so that I will remember to do the barest minimum and feed my own fish. But so, okay. Oh, there was I was just circling back to this wedding planner scene. There was a funny line though when Fran turns to the wedding planner and she goes, "He's from drinkers, we're from eaters. So let's plan the menu accordingly," which is so true. That's so spot on with my English and then Jewish side.
Same. And so great line. Also, I really liked "It's the wedding of a century," and then Sylvia going, "Yeah, it took that long to happen."
Yep. And then in the next scene, we go back to the mansion, and Sylvia and Fran get home. Yetta and Sammy are sitting on the couch, and Sylvia goes, "We're leaving in an hour, so start getting your coats on." And then Sammy asked Fran if she could help his nephew get a job on one of Mr. Sheffield's shows. And he's like, you know, he's a rapper. He's really great. He's rapped for Puff Daddy. And Fran instantly sees this as her chance to, like, quote, be the woman behind the man and sort of like, you know, show that she's going to be a really good partner professionally to Mr. Sheffield and help with this new hit musical. And so then we cut to Mr. Sheffield in his office, and he and Cece, they're like frantic to get a star for this new show because they're presenting to investors that week and they don't have anybody. And so Fran comes in and she's like, I've got the answer to your problems. I found a guy. He's actually a relative. Which I love. I do love how quickly their family globs onto relatives. But then Mr. Sheffield, this was super patronizing. He's literally like, "You shouldn't be worrying your pretty little head about this. You should be planning our wedding." And Fran's like, the guy rapped for Puff Daddy, who now listeners would know as P. Diddy or Sean Puffy Combs, because he's had a couple name reincarnations since then. But anyway.
AKA Sean John, which is also my middle name.
Okay. I know, I just forgot. So anyway, but then this turns the tables on Mr. Sheffield. And now when he hears that, like, oh my God, this guy has rapped for Puff Daddy, and he's like, okay. And then because Mr. Sheffield's like, oh, we actually even asked Puff Daddy and he turned us down. And Fran goes, "You didn't bore him with your Mary Martin trivia, did you?" And Mr. Sheffield's like, "Most people don't know." Oh, I'm using a Fran voice for a Mr. Sheffield voice. But he goes, "Most people don't know he's Mary Martin's son," which is very funny trivia, and it's true. Yep. Because
Mary Martin played Peter Pan.
Yeah. And well, he goes, "Most people don't know that Larry Hagman is Mary Martin's son." That was actually the line. Larry Hagman was JR on Dallas. So that was some good trivia. And so Mr. Sheffield decides.
God, I feel like now we have to stop and explain what Dallas was.
Oh God, we'll cut it all. But yeah, so Mr. Sheffield's like, "Ooh, wow, this is actually fantastic!" And he's going to give her a chance on this. And then the next day, Fran is in the living room, and Sammy arrives with his nephew, Erwin. And this is the really fun reveal that we were mentioning at the beginning. First of all, his nephew is played by rapper Coolio, who is huge rapper of this era. And the thing is, though, he's playing a guy named Erwin who is a super shy nerd. Literally has the glasses with the tape in the middle and the suit.
Pocket protector.
And Fran's like, "You dress like that to sing?" And he's like, I don't sing. And she's like, oh, well, then why did your uncle tell me you're a rapper? And he goes, I am. I use bows, ribbons. And I realize he's a present rapper professionally. And then she's like, then why did he tell me you wanted a job on Broadway? And he goes, well, I live close. I figured I could just walk. It's like it's just so funny and like silly. And Fran's like devastated because it's going to be a huge disaster. And then later that day, Fran, she's in the living room with Sammy and Erwin, and now she's like freaking out. She's like, do you realize Maxwell Sheffield has one of the most famous composers on Broadway coming to listen to a gift rapper from Crate and Barrel? And he's like, Pottery Barn, we were there first. And, you know, and then Erwin tries to sing and he's really not that good. And Mr. Sheffield comes in and he sees that like this is the quote incredible rapper that was promised, and then he freaks out and like drags Fran out of there, and he's livid and he's like, why did I think this would be different just because we're engaged? And then he also calls her Miss Fine, which I thought was emotionally abusive, because I think like if you're engaged to someone, you can't cut back to calling them Miss Fine as if you're cordial professionals. I was like, that's so mean.
Yeah, it's very mean. It's because it's like very withholding. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, it's
like
cruel,
that's
dude.
how we're gonna play. So then we cut to this really silly, funny montage where it's basically like Fran, who only knows about like quote rap or hip hop culture from stuff she's probably seen on TV, where she's trying to transform this really nerdy guy who also knows nothing about it. And it's so one thing about Coolio is he had like a signature hairstyle, right? That like that's what he, you know, a big part of his look. And so in this
twisty, very like twisty, spiky cornrows, basically.
Yeah. And she's giving it to him, but she, as a middle-aged white woman, is doing it by looking at a picture of Bo Derek, which probably would be her biggest cultural reference and understanding, because Bo Derek famously like wore cornrows as a white woman, and everyone was like, ooh, amazing. And you know, basically the African American community is like, fuck you guys, we've been doing this for years and there's a huge cultural significance to us, but now that this white lady does it, it's cool. But like it was very realistic that would be who Fran first thought of.
Totally.
And then the next thing is where I laughed out loud, because so she has him wrapping a Christmas present, right? Or like a holiday present. And she's like showing him like, hey, you take the paper with one hand and you move it, you take the paper with another. And then she removes the actual paper and has him just do the motion. And then she's like, and that's how you should be moving your arms. But it's all very visual. So even describing it's a little hard, but I would say then one of the funniest parts is, he's not looking cool. And then Yetta walks by in one of her oversized like tracksuit jackets. And then in the next scene, Coolio is wearing it, which is also pretty realistic based on Yetta's wardrobe.
Yes, it worked so well. Like the best. That was my favorite joke in the whole episode.
Yeah, it was very funny. So she's kind of, you know, we've done that sort of like miscongeniality montage, but it's turning like super geek into guy who can rap. And it is very funny because Coolio is such a famous rapper at the time. And it was just fun to see him playing against type.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
And then in the next scene, Maxwell and Cece, they're conducting auditions with the famous composer they're working with, who's actually played by a guy named TK Carter. And he and Fran Drescher had previously co-starred together in a couple things. Like he was in Dr. Detroit and something else. So I wonder if she like knew him and was friends with him, or if it was just like random that they circled back around. But given what we kind of know about how like Fran and Peter like often brought in people they had like friendships with, I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, oh, he'd be great for this. The auditions are a disaster. They're not finding anyone good. And actually this composer, he's basically like, you know, I don't think we can work together. Like we are not on the same page. But just as he's going to leave, they hear a beat coming from the living room and they go out to investigate. And it's so Erwin. It's so silly. Erwin is crushing it in a rap, which I can only imagine was written by Fran. Like it makes no sense. Niles is trying to do quote cool.
No, I mean
rap.
I think the implication is that all of a sudden he's fully transformed into Coolio now.
Well,
and
he did.
He like writes and raps and he just like has flow.
Well, I was thinking about it. They did try to explain this earlier in the episode because when Fran's like, this is a disaster, he's like, well, no, like, give me a shot. You know, my uncle Sammy's a great piano player. Maybe some of that musical talent like got passed on to me. So they do try to explain like, there's a shot. This guy is a secret genius.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense to me.
It's so silly. It's so silly. And, you know, he's rapping really well and Niles is dancing like the biggest dork. It's so painful to watch. Oh my God.
It's painful.
It's so painful. I will say that Fran has some pretty good moves. but still, it's
Niles.
Yeah, it's like, two white people trying their best to seem cool based on stuff they clearly saw on TV.
Yeah.
But the composer is impressed and he's like, Maxwell, hot damn, you've done it. And it all works out. It's so absurd. It's so absurd. And Fran saved the day.
Yeah.
Instead of like maybe, I like how it's like Fran saved the day, not Erwin saved the day by being a genius. But that does check out with our culture.
Or not Sammy saved the day by introducing her to him in the first place. But sure, the white lady did everything.
True white savior. So then they head into Mr. Sheffield's office to work out. they head into Mr. Sheffield's office to like.
I'm foreshadowing Cece's breakdown by having one myself.
All right. They walk into Mr. Sheffield's office and they end up slamming the door on Cece's face without realizing it because she's like now so irrelevant because it's now like, oh, Fran just not only took her place as like the main woman in Mr. Sheffield's life, but now she's taking over like professional stuff. And Cece literally responds by looking around, and this was really funny. She's like, because Niles is like, is everything all right, Miss Babcock? And she's like, I'm frightened. I don't want to be alone. And she rushes out. And then Niles is like, oh, well, she finally went crackers. And then he goes into the other room and she's like, Mama, is that you? Niles literally calls a psychiatrist because she's had a complete mental breakdown.
I mean, it's also pretty dark.
Oh, it's super dark. Like
because then like Chester comes in and like the button, right? And like we realize that like they're now watching Chester because she's in a mental institution.
Yes. It's Gracie comes in with Chester and she's like, how long do we get to keep him? And Fran goes, oh, until Miss Babcock gets released. I mean, comes home. But I think the real significant part of that button is she's like, you know, it's funny. Usually when a pet misses its master, it just mopes around all day whimpering. Yeah. And then Niles comes in looking super depressed.
Yes, which they're setting up for next episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another button, weirdly.
Yes.
It's like a button on the button where Fran comes in to the living room and Sammy is there with Yetta. And Sammy's like, hey, my niece wants to sing at your wedding. And you know, Fran's like, no. Like because she's thinking like, oh, she's not like a real singer. And then he's like, all right, I'll tell Aretha. And she's like, wait, Aretha? And then she's like, oh my God, yes, that's amazing. And she runs out to tell Mr. Sheffield. And then he calls the Sammy calls the DMV and he goes, can I speak to Aretha Jones? It's so good.
Yep.
So stupid. But
so very funny. I love that we get some Ray Charles. I just love that Ray Charles and Yella are married. It's so funny and random.
It's amazing. And then they got him to come back for multiple episodes.
I know. How random.
All right. Segments?
Segments.
And now, segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments with Sean and Toria.
I really depend on the segments theme to like jazz me up for the second half of the show.
I really does.
Do. Like I dance and I'm like, yeah, all right, we're doing segments now. Like
I was also grooving. That's funny.
Yeah. All right. So lines and moments. We did a lot of mine.
I really liked when Fran was, voicing her worries to Sylvia about like not having a job. And, Sylvia's like, you're going to be the woman behind the man. She goes, do you know where your father would be today if I hadn't pushed him? And then Fran goes, not collecting disability? And Sylvia like nods knowingly, like, that's right.
Yeah. It's great.
And then my only other favorite line that we hadn't said is once Erwin gets the job and everyone's like excitedly running over to Mr. Sheffield's office, he pulls Fran aside and he's like, wow, he's like, Fran, thank you so much. This is so fat. And then fat meaning pretty hot and tempting, which was very commonly said at that time. And she goes, oh, Erwin, I know that fat is a good thing, but please don't say it so near my name.
Yeah. And we did the mixed family. He's from drinkers, I'm from eaters is really, really, really strong. And then my yikes line of the episode is Maxwell in describing the rap musical says, it's about violent gangs that fight in the streets and every so often stop to sing poignantly about it. And I literally in my notes wrote, yikes. Jesus. Yes. Christ.
No, I guess if you're thinking from if he's thinking from no, there's no way. I was like, because that is West Side Story also, but also kind of, no, it's not good. Not good.
Not good. And then there's another did not age well line, which is Cece's worried about being pushed aside, and Niles goes, oh, when Yoko married John, that didn't break up the Beatles, did it? And then Cece's like, no. But like, look, it didn't. Stop it.
I think Yoko. I know. I agree. I'm a huge Yoko fan. I friggin' love Yoko.
Justice for Yoko.
But I do think, I think that most people in our culture are not that into Beatles like lore that they have an opinion either way. Or like they probably still are like, probably Yoko broke them up.
She broke up the band, but that's not what happened. She did not. They were all.
Well, no, but that's because we love the Beatles and we love that documentary that came out.
That's right.
Oh my God.
Get Back. Only on Disney Plus while they still let it be up there until they decide to take it down and put it in a vault because that's what
so good.
Media companies do now. I'm like so scared we're not going to make it to the end of this show that HBO one day is just going to be like, all right, taking the nanny off.
Well, no, we're gonna do a power hour, like a power 2 weeks in September, I think, and get so far ahead. Okay,
we're gonna try. All right.
So for Yiddish, depending on when you're listening. So Yiddish, I didn't really hear Yiddish, but they did mention a food called kishki, which is I forget why now. Sometimes I write it down and then I don't. I think I'm going to remember when they said it in the episode. But kishki it's stuffed derma, which sounds so nasty, but it's probably delicious. But so it's a Jewish dish traditionally made from flour or matzah meal, schmaltz, and spices. In modern cooking, synthetic casings often replace beef intestine because it's like put in a beef intestine.
It's delicious. It's
yum.
like sausage,
Mm-hmm. Like that's all sausages.
Just meat stuffed in casing.
I think just calling it derma, like dermis, makes you really think about it. Well, that's the thing is almost anything you eat that comes from an animal, if you actually think about it, you're like, oh, but it's so yummy. But so for trivia,
yes.
I'm going to hit people with some Coolio trivia. So again, he was an incredibly famous artist in the 90s. And then he kind of segued into like a lot of weird B-movie acting, but that's neither here nor there. His full name, it was artist Leon Irvy Jr. He was born in 1963, and he was a Grammy-winning artist. He was best known for Gangster's Paradise, which I would think people like 20 to 25 and younger would know that song because it's such a hit song.
It's a classic. That song is definitely a classic.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Gangster Paradise.
Yeah. I mean, it became one of I'm reading this from, it's from Wikipedia, but it became one of the most successful rap songs of all time, topping the Billboard Hot 100 for 3 weeks. It was the #1 single of 1995 in the US for all genres, which is incredible.
And if you don't know Gangster Paradise,
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting there. Don't step on my toes. It was #1 for all genres. It was a global hit. But the song created controversy when Coolio claimed that comedy musician Weird Al had not asked for permission to make his parody song Amish Paradise. Because the real song is like living in a gangster's paradise, and Weird Al's was living in an Amish paradise. It was so funny.
It goes.
It's so funny.
It's okay. He goes, because the original goes, you're spending most our lives living in a gangster paradise. And then they repeat it, right? Spending most, okay. But then the Weird Al one goes, we're spending most our lives living in an Amish paradise. I churn butter once or twice living in an Amish paradise. It's hard work and sacrifice living in an Amish paradise. And then my favorite line, we sell quilts at discount price living in an Amish.
It was so funny. And it's such a bummer that, I mean, I just wish Coolio was cooler about it, I guess. But also I'll say that the song won the award for Best Rap Solo Performance at the 1996 Grammy Awards.
For Weird Al, and it was fucked up.
Wait, what?
No, I'm joking. Coolio.
I got so good.
It was Coolio.
I thought that maybe like the Amish Paradise had also won a Grammy, and then that would be
in my joke, they gave it to Weird Al and not to Coolio.
Wow, talk about white savior theme.
Yeah. Great job.
Well, also, talking about white savior theme. It was a song that was prominently featured in a Michelle Pfeiffer movie called Dangerous Minds. Yes. And this was just like, this was honestly a theme well into the 2000s too, with like The Last King of Scots. I mean, it's a million things, but basically, yes, like white person comes in and it's about like their struggle in the environment of like trying to better the situation for non-white people, but it's like they're the central focus as opposed to like all of the many stories you could be telling about the people that are like in that situation.
Nope.
But anyway,
it was so hard for that white lady to teach those black kids. So hard.
But I will say that song was in the trailer and I remember it really well.
Yeah, same. It's a great song. For
the Fran or the Cece, or the whoever.
Yeah,
I had a lot of trouble relating to anyone in this episode, just because it was so specific. It was like there wasn't like anything universal happening. I don't relate to Fran like worrying about not working anymore. If anything, I was just jealous of her.
I feel like it's so funny. Normally, I come very unprepared, and I think of it in the last second, and I normally can't find anyone that I really like. You normally give me who I relate to, but this week I wrote down. Also, I'm the CC because we are. I mean, not when this episode comes out. This will be long in my past, but we are currently 6 days away from the wedding, and I feel. I'm not stressed at all about getting married. Like that part is like very exciting. I can't wait to be married. I love this person more than I've ever loved anything in my entire life. And you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. The commitment is not the part that's stressful.
It's not the stressful part. The planning, the the cost of everything, the like weird hidden things that no one told us we were going to have to pay for that are insanely expensive. Like, oh, we have some candles, so now we have to get a fire permit for $400. It's just like liability insurance. No one told me I had to get liability insurance for this wedding. Like,
wait, so like if someone falls or something,
if anything goes wrong, dude.
For like,
anyway,
okay.
Needless to say, I am currently sitting in a padded cell recording this episode on my phone that I hid in my butt when they committed me to this mental asylum that I will spend the next weekend until they wheel me out and I get married to my beloved.
Oh, man.
So anyway, that's why I feel like I'm the CC this week. But I'm, again, this is all in my in the when you're hearing this, it's in the past for me, and I'm chilling like a villain and happily married. So it's all just we're just in the crunch zone.
You also, like Cece, you have a large parasite growing in your stomach.
Oh yeah, but it's not a tumor, so it's fine.
All right.
On that note, we are available online on Instagram at Oh Mr. Chef Pod, and while it still lasts, we are also on Twitter. But you gotta get in while you're able to see us, because you only are allowed to look at 600 tweets a day now, and so we hope that one of our tweets will be one of your 600.
Just get off that,
place.
That place is dumpster fire. Just stop. All right, but okay.
All right, and also rate us and review and all that good stuff. And we love you. And what do you got, Toria?
That's all. That's it. I love you. I love you guys.
I love you guys. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
The Flashing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.